Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. With God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Assalamu alaikum. God's peace be upon you, and good evening. My name is Fitra Muhammad, and welcome to Masjid Muhammad, the nation's mosque. This is the National Faith and Blue Weekend. The program we have planned this evening, one-on-one discussion with Muslim officers, is one of the many programs to honor the men and women police officers that are entrusted with an enormous responsibility, the safety of our communities across America. The intent of this program is to provide understanding, share empathy, and build stronger relations between police officers and community members. The information that you will hear this evening is revealing, personal, and firsthand experiences. We will hear from trusted Muslim American police officers. We will also hear and learn about the heartbreak and challenges from a parent whose son has been entangled with the law from an early age. Lastly, we will learn the top 10 misconceptions that police and citizens have about each other from a representative in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Before we get started, I want to give a special thanks to our partner, the U.S. Attorney's Office, that is being represented by Monica Vinny. Please, Monica.
Thank you so much, dear Sister Fitra. Thank you all so much for having me here. My name is Monica Vinny, and I am the 5th District Community Outreach Specialist with the U.S. Attorney's Office here in the District of Columbia. I'm so honored to be a part of this wonderful event that we have planned tonight, and I pray that you all will listen not only with your ears, but with your heart, because this will be a blessing to all of us. So thank you so much, dear Fitra.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. So our first speaker, retired two officers. We have two officers with us this evening who are our first speakers. Both are proven to be trustworthy and dependable. Our first speaker, Lieutenant Shakir Muslim. He has served 38 years in law enforcement. He is the first Muslim to join the DC Metropolitan Police in 1982. Please let us welcome Lieutenant Shakir Muslim.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The name of God, the merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer. Yeah, being the first Muslim on the police department, it was trying. And before I decided to join the police department, I had the wisdom of Imam Muhammad, because I asked him a question: should I join the police department? And he said, this is a comment. You know, he always paused when he's thinking. And then he said, yeah, it would bring respect, and it would bring respect and legitimacy to our community. I want to get it right. I don't never want to misquote him. And that's what he said. Everything I did that was major in my life, I always asked him for advice, like joining the military. And they say about the military, all men should serve their country. So I joined the military also. But the police department, their challenges was a lot different. Being the first one, they didn't know if they could trust me or not. So I went through a whole lot of trust issues until they learned they could. And I would not bend my religion for nothing in the world, what I believed in. So they found that out. They was cool with that. 9/11, I had no issues whatsoever. 9/11, I was with our imam, drove him back to Chicago. Nobody called me and said, you got to come back. They knew what I was doing. I got permission from them to do that. I had no problems being a Muslim on the police department. Now, both Muslims and non-Muslims asked me, how can you be a police officer and a Muslim too? And I said, I don't see a conflict in that. Hopefully you police yourself and your behavior. Mine's are just publicly. And I believed in freedom, justice, and equality. But I believe the police department stood for also, the good officers. And for the most part, the majority are good officers. And the reason that we joined the police department, if you ask them, 90% would say to help people, especially when you're from this community. You want to just help. Some of the misconceptions from the community, and some of them are justified. They don't know whether to trust the police or not. They don't know if they're going to call the police when they see a crime is going to escalate to somebody getting shot or locked up unjustly. Systemic racism in our community. Sometimes we over-police our community, the African-American community. We over-police it. So we have to be very, very careful with that. And another thing that I felt was misconception was that we looked at as oppressors in the community, and we're not. You can just spell all that old crazy stuff. Defund the police to me would mean more money and help for police officers in the Employees Assistance Program, which counsels police officers. And we need that counseling. And any police officer think they don't need counseling, they're making a mistake. Take advantage of that. It's free. The other thing, as far as police are concerned about the community, sometimes we think we're God. We act as though we're God, judge and jury at the same time. You don't have to lock up everybody you come across with, or everybody that commits a minor crime. Those in the community that are from the community, they seem to be more just than those coming from outside the community, policing our African-American community. And remember, we're just a microcosm of the society we came up in, our environment. Just like anything else, you have a good and bad. But I think the majority are very good. And it's a blessing to be able to have that responsibility. Some call it power, I call it responsibility. You have the responsibility of protecting people you don't even know and giving your life for them. Even mass murderers, when we take them into custody, we gotta treat them humanely. So when you see your police officers, come up and say hi to them and say thank you. That means so much. That's all I have to say.
Lieutenant Shakir, let me ask you, with you being the first Muslim policeman, how was that accepted in the community in 1982? How accepting was that?
You know, I came in the community in 73. And, you know, we didn't have police officers in the masjid at all. You couldn't come armed in there.
Exactly.
So from that to asking me, how can you be a police officer and be a Muslim? I just could not understand that. There were no police officers during the Prophet's time. And Allah be pleased with him. That was because people policed themselves, no matter who it was. Pull your brother's coattail, and they did that. Family members, strangers, they didn't have no weapons to do it. They was not organized back then. So until we learn how to do that, and that's gonna happen ever again, we must have someone to keep the peace and order.
So did you find the community was accepting of you becoming a police officer? Were you looked at as suspicious then by many of your community, many in your community? Mm-hmm.
Of course. Because once I got on the police department, I learned that they did have informants in the masjid.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a couple of them, and they told me that. But once people get to know you and they saw my character, everybody seemed to adjust to it kind of slowly, but they did eventually.
Mm. So did the community members, when you had to go out and make arrests, did community members know that you were a police officer, or was that something that was not known?
That's a good question. Now, that's a good question, because we had to have a name tag, and my last name is Muslim.
Mm.
And they would ask me, where is that from? Why you wearing that tag on your shoulders? I mean, on your chest. That's my name. So that broke the ice with a lot of people. There was no hiding that.
So did it make it easier for you or more difficult for you?
Now, I like to say, in our usri usra. After the difficulty, definitely came the success and the acceptance.
And you became a lieutenant. How long after you were on the force did you become? Did you go from an officer to sergeant and then lieutenant? Is that the way it goes?
Yes, I was officer, first coming on officer of the 3rd District. And then I got promoted to sergeant and went to the 2nd District, and got promoted as lieutenant and went to the 5th District.
Mm.
So the last 5 years, I was a lieutenant.
Mm. And how did your responsibilities change from in each area? How did it change from an officer to sergeant, lieutenant?
Good question. As an officer and a sergeant and a detective, you had contact with the community.
Mm.
Once I became a lieutenant, I didn't go out much. I had to deal with the most difficult people in the world to deal with. That was other officers.
Mm.
Because they're not used to taking orders. They're used to giving orders. So that was really a shock to me.
And was it difficult for them to take orders from a Muslim?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes, and especially, we have to do roll call in the morning or in the afternoon. Whenever you have to do roll call, and you stand in front of everybody and tell them, this is what you expect. And I would write on the blackboard, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And I would write my name. And I would tell them, one thing I will not tolerate, and that's disrespecting our community. So I got a lot of pushback from that, but I didn't care.
And what were some of the areas that you had to patrol when you were an officer and a sergeant?
As an officer, 14th and W Street, back in the 82, when there was like 50 junkies on the corner at a time. And my job was to clear that block every day, on foot. And I did that. When Muhammad Ali would come in town, he requested a Muslim officer to be with him.
Mm.
And I got that privilege also. Same with Imam Muhammad. When he came into town, I was always with him. It wasn't a time that he came here, I wasn't with him. And sometimes we were officially assigned to him with a car and everything, radios, everything, just for him, just for his visit.
And as a Muslim, did you find yourself being more understanding, or did you find yourself caught in between understanding the difficulties and the challenges that the community were faced with and your religious beliefs? How did that impact you?
We were blessed to have, during my time there, we were blessed to have the first Islamic chaplain as Imam Yusuf. And also, it was under Chief Ramsey. And he said, for the sisters can wear a hairpiece as long as it's in conformity with the uniform. So that was, just mind-blowing at the time for him to say that, you dress according to your religious belief. There was no problem with that. It was one thing, I joined the SWAT team also. And when the brothers came to me, African-American lieutenant came to me, and I was an officer at the time. He said, they're saying, why should we allow you to be on the SWAT team where you go back and tell all the Muslims our techniques? It was right after the Hanafi takeover of the City Hall and the wounding of Mayor Marion Barry. So it was rough during those periods. But most people that knew me, they fought for me.
Mm.
Most of them, I didn't say anything. They stood up for me.
And what was can you think of the most dangerous situation that you were in? Can you share one of those experiences with us?
Like I was telling you earlier, one of them was at the same time, one of the most gratifying thing as a police officer was I was put on assignment for the boys club one summer for 90-day detail. And when we first got there at 7 o'clock to open up the gym and the boys club, it was kids waiting in line. And it closed at 7 o'clock that night. The same kids were still there. They had nowhere to go. Mm. One day I was chasing this guy through the hallways at 14th and Euclid. At that time, it was real high rise, I hate to call them projects, but low income housing. And I was chasing this guy by myself. And one of the little kids that came every day, 12 hours and stayed there, he comes out the door and said, "Officer Muslim, he went that way and he has a gun." I immediately stopped. That was a blessing. So the dangerous thing, you don't think about till you go home at night and then you shake and you think about, wow, that would have been hit for me. But in those dangerous situations, your senses are heightened all the time. Everybody that comes to a near-death experience, their senses are heightened because of that. So we came there just about every day or every other day, especially in '82, the murder capital of the world was DC. So after a while it becomes, I hate to say it, kind of routine.
Wow. You can only imagine the kind of danger that you were constantly walking into. And we are forever grateful to you as being one of the pioneers. And now we have Muslim police all over America because of you and people like you. So we want to say thank you. This weekend, we wanted to honor you and all of the sacrifices that you have made for this community and opening the door for so many wonderful police officers that I know personally and that many of us all know. And so we're glad that you're here to be able to share this with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Sabir Saleem. And Sabir, he joined the DC Metropolitan Police Department 28 years ago. Brother Sabir, we are eagerly waiting to hear your stories and share in your experience.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My story is similar to, I would say, most police officers that join MPD or any other law enforcement agency. Our primary reason is to serve, and to take pressure off the community so the community members, can do what they do best in terms of promoting community life. Now, how it affected me personally, from an individual standpoint, the number one thing, as a young man, when I joined the police department, I was 28 years old, and I've been married since I was 21, so I had children. So by joining the police department, you work strange hours, very strange hours. At first I worked midnights, then I worked 7 nights, 3 in the morning, the power shift. So there was a constant sense of trying to maintain your family. So when you get off, these strange times, I had children going to school. My wife was home with the kids, so that kind of affected our time, as a family. And so when you get off, you're always trying to catch up. You're trying to create activities. You're trying to check with the children in terms of their schooling and their recreational activities. So that was one of the primary burdens that I experienced, was the family part. Fortunately, my wife was very good at taking care of the family when I was at work. So that, and by me knowing that took a lot of burden off my mind, so I can go to work and do my job. So I thank her more so than anything else in terms of my success as an officer. Because one thing you don't want to be is walking down the street, dealing with a bunch of knuckleheads, and you worried about what's going on in your home. So I thank a lot for her, and I thank a lot for that. Being an officer on the street, like Shakir said, it has its challenges, but it's nothing that's I would say that we didn't feel as though we couldn't handle, or that we didn't handle. Because if your primary focus is being a professional, you've been trained, and you've been professional. You're trying to be fair, unbiased, and you're there to help the community. It's almost like, I use an analogy, an officer, a good police officer look at him or herself like a lifeguard. And if somebody is drowning, and you're gonna pull them out of the water. And the people that's drowning, they don't care if you're black, white, Muslim, Christian, Jew. Only thing they want you to stick that hand down there and pull them out of the water on the dry land. And that's the approach that I always took. So when I approach any kind of situation like that, I just looked at it. I'm there for a service. I'm gonna use all my training. I'm gonna use my whole soul to try to remedy the situation. And when it came to the community, the Muslim community, like I said, Shakir and I, we was on the department around the same time. And naturally, you're gonna have some people that have I would say, not doubts, but concerns.
Suspicion
Yes,
is a better word.
There's suspicion.
Yes.
But the only one, but I really didn't deal with that, because prior to being a police officer, I was very, very active in the community. I came to the community in 1974. Under Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I sold the papers, and I sold the fish, I sold the sardines. So I sold it in the street. And then when the transition came under Imam W.D. Muhammad, I was there doing that. So I was always visible in the community. I worked trade, I worked New Earth team, I worked with the committees, I worked with the banquets, so I was always active in the community. So when I joined the MPD, I already had a track record in the community. So when I would face those type of suspicions, I looked at it from a different way. I looked at them with suspicion. Because I knew my record, and I knew people had observed me for a number of years. So anybody that had unfounded suspicions, that kind of helped me to kind of see them in a light that I needed to see them in. Because Shakir tell you, and Kevin and Sister Anan, and she'll find out that you're always going to have people that's coming to the Muslim community that it just ain't quite right, And so when they put themselves out there like that, you got to shine a light on them. You got to shine a light on them. You got to let the believers, and you got to let the people of good character in the community, let them know that this person can't be trusted. I don't care what they call themselves. They can call themselves a Muslim, they can call themselves whatever. So I was blessed again to work in the community for years prior to coming on MPD. And then when I came on the MPD, I had the foot beats and scout car beats and things like that in the 3rd district. But then Allah blessed me to get into community relations. And by working community relations, that afforded me an opportunity to actually interact on another level with the community. And I was able to go into the schools. I was what you would call an officer friendly for a while. I was able to go into the schools, and I did safety presentations from kindergarten to high school. And so, you know, the elementary schools, it was more like, you know, safety, traffic safety, bullying and things like that. And high schools was like rights and responsibilities. You know, so I did that for a number of years. And I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to teach one class in our academy, which was cultural sensitivity and workplace inclusion. And that dealt with racism, that dealt with, it dealt with perceptions of the police had of the community, and the perception that the community had of police officers. You know, so I was blessed to be able to teach that class. You know, so I consider myself blessed by being on MPD. You know, I had a wonderful career. I did 28 years, you know, from 1983 to 2011. And then after that, I chilled for about 2 years. You know, I was able to volunteer at the Mass Theater for right after my career. And again, I consider myself blessed, and I'm always looking for an opportunity to serve.
So, how did you get along with fellow officers how did you deal with fellow officers that may have had their prejudices against Muslims?
Well, I didn't
because of misunderstanding, not understanding or having knowledge about Muslims at that time. We know Muslims are very much in the police department now, but back when you were a police officer and Lieutenant Shakir was a police officer, there weren't in many numbers. So how did you get along with officers who may not have understood Muslims?
Police officers have this kind of, I would say, weird sense of dealing with stress. You know, they have a weird sense of humor, and it's really like it's safeguarding themselves. I give you an example. A police officer, or a group of police officers may be on the scene where somebody got shot. They may be laughing and joking about something else. They're not laughing and joking about somebody got shot. That's just how they dealing with their own pressure. You know, so they can continue their job. But some people will misinterpret that. They say, "Oh, he laughing and joking because man, I said, no, they're not." You know, they trying to talk about something else so they can do their job. So a lot of times, I'm saying that to say a lot of times police officers would say little simple things to you, and they would imply certain things. But at the end of the day, they only go on how they see you behave. You know, and what they might say is, you know, to rationalize in their mind, because they can't really point at you and say, you know, you this, that, and other, or what they'll say is, "Are you not like those other Muslims? Are you different?" and that was a compliment. So you take this compliment, but in terms of them impeding me doing my job or putting up barriers of me doing my job, I don't recall any I would say exaggerated situations. You know, you're always going to have your little impediments, you know. But back during the time when I was in Nation Islam, Muhammad, we used to say every knock is a boost, and that's how we looked at it. And we just accepted those challenges and moved forward. You know, it wasn't time to be moaning and groaning and weeping. You know, they ain't treating me right, or you know, they don't, you know, they don't this, that, and other. And I just do your job, keep on moving forward. You know, and thank Allah, you know, that you know, he has your back.
Did you ever find yourself in a position that you had to arrest someone, a family member or someone that you knew that was very close to you?
Well, I arrested people that I knew. Matter of fact, one guy that was named KV, I used to play football with him. we was back in high school. It was like semi-pro for football, neighborhood football, and I was a cornerback and he was a safety. So what Shaki mentioned, 14th and W, I saw him up there. He had become a substance abuser. So I come up 14th and W. It's about 100 people, literally 100 people on the street, and I told him to move, and everybody moved but him because he recognized me. And by him not moving, he had to go. And I saw him down after I locked him up. I saw him down at the court the next day, and we was down the cafeteria. I bought him breakfast. I brought him a cup of coffee. He poured about a half a cup of sugar in it, and we laughed and joked. And we had to discuss about why I locked him up. He knew why I locked him up. I mean, it is what it is. And,
so do you go back and visit the area that you used to patrol?
No, the last time I've been to the district that I retired from was about a month ago, and that was just to use the bathroom. I mean, I've moved on. I've moved on, and I thank a lot for my time with MPD, and I'm 1,000,000% behind the officers that's still there, but sometimes you got to just turn the page, and I've turned the page.
Understandable. There's a lot of controversy right now in the police department all across America, but this program today is not about the controversy and the confrontation that's going on. Today we're hearing personal stories of police officers and what they face, the danger, the relationships, and so I appreciate and thank you very much. We're going to move on. We ask that you and Lieutenant Shakir stick around because we'll have some questions for you. So we're going to now, Monica, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point to introduce our parent.
I'm talking with the mute button on. Thank you so much, dear Fitcher. Dear Fitcher, thank you so much. Brother Sabir and Brother Shakir, thank you both so much for being with us today. And thank you so much, brothers, for your service. We really appreciate you. Peace and blessings to you and your families as you continue to just enjoy your retirement, enjoy life. Thank you so much. I want to take a moment now to introduce one of our parents, a dear sister, who does have a son entangled with the law, with the judicial system. And we're going to hear her story. It's truly amazing. And I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to let her come forth, my dear sister, and tell you all about what she has experienced with law enforcement and the judicial system. Thank you so much. Come on, my dear sister. Thank you for being with us today.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd just like to say thank you to all of the panelists and thank you all for having me here. As our dear sister Monica stated, I am a parent. I'm a single mother with 4 adult sons now. And my second son first started getting in trouble when he was 13. And we live here in 5D. And I got a call from I think the youth department on, which was used to be on Rhode Island Avenue, saying, asked if I had a son by his name and told me that he was up there. And when I got up there, I went in there with a belt because I wanted to tear his hind parts up, but they told me I could not see him and that he would be in court on the next day, which was a Saturday morning. And to God be all the glory that they did not, the night that he was arrested, he was on the playground at Taft, in front of Taft Junior High School. And he had a fake gun, which he took the tip off of. So when 5D rolled up on him, they could have very well taken his life. but they didn't. And I'm grateful to God for that. They realized that it was a fake gun, and he didn't try to make any quick moves. He did what they told him to do, and they was able to arrest him without any incidents. And the next day when we went to the court building, it was about 30 to 40 of our family members, church members, and friends who went with me down there. And the judge, the prosecutors, everybody was so amazed that he had that much support. So the judge was like, I want everybody to come into the courtroom, because I understand that normally in juvenile courts, they only allow the parents in. But because it was so many of us, and we were told that normally the juveniles don't even get supports from their parents. So they asked all of us to come in. And that was a very trying time for us, going through that experience. And it just seemed to snowball out of control from there. I don't know if he thought it was cool to get locked up and be able to brag to his friends that he had gone through that, but it just went down the hill from there. And his crimes escalated uh, from the first crime where he went to somebody's house to threaten them, to ask them to come outside because he wanted to fight them, and that's when he took the fake gun. So that was the first crime, and then things just went from there to robberies and other things that um, people in the streets have tried to tell me about, but I told him I don't want to hear anything that he's done out there in the streets. Whatever he's done stays out there. I don't want to hear it. But I was told that he was not the young man that you would want to come across in the middle of the night. And um, it was very trying, very frustrating, trying to get him help. He was cutting off ankle bracelets. I'm calling the probation officer, chasing the probation officers down, like, hey, where you all at? You supposed to come to the house, like, please help me with him. Like, I'm not one of those parents who condoned anything that he was doing. I was going through his room. I saw guns, I saw drugs. I emailed everybody on the DC council, and I told them I need help. Here I am as a parent. I'm crying out for help. I need you all to do something, fix the laws. I don't care what you do, but I need some help with this young man before he kills somebody or somebody kills him. I took it upon myself to reach out to the Sasha Bruce house to get counseling, and the gentleman would come in. He would come in. He was constant, and he would come every week and help with counseling. He stopped going to school, and when he did go to school, he would get into fights. And he was at Roosevelt High School, and unbeknownst to me, anytime he got into a fight, they had to call the police, and the police would always say, that he was dangerous and armed, which I found out probably about 4 years ago. So didn't even realize that he was, that terrible in schools as well. But a very bright young man. Um, in first grade, they realized that he was above his grade level, and he would tear up the classrooms. So this is how they found out, because he would tear up the classrooms. Like, he would be the first one, finish his work, and then he would just go on a tantrum and tear up the classrooms. And they tested him and realized he was on a fourth grade reading and math level. So his energy levels, his positivity levels, everything, it did not lead us to believe that he was going to go down the road that he went down. But the father of my 4 sons, he has been incarcerated. I had some run-ins with the police as well as a juvenile, but these are things that I had always openly talked to my sons about, hoping that they would not follow in their father's footsteps or my footsteps. But this particular son just seemed like he was bent on going in that direction. The more we said don't, the more he went in that direction, to the point where at 15, I told him he had to go. He could no longer live here in this house, which was putting the rest of us in jeopardy for whatever may have come this way. And lo and behold, my third son, who was a student at Banneker High School, came home from school one day in the broad daylight, and two guys robbed him because they were looking for my other son. And he was a block away from our house. And that's when I was like, no way, no how. I love you, but you have to go. You can no longer stay here in this house. Yes, it's dangerous for him to be on the streets because I didn't want him to hurt anybody, but I didn't want any drama and trouble to come directly to our doorsteps because of him. And in that saying 5D police, I got to know a lot of them by name and by face, and some of them would just come by and just to check on us. Hey, how's your son doing? Is he okay? Do we need to go look for him? You know, I could call a few of them and say, hey, you know, he's on the run again, and they would say, okay, we'll be on the lookout for him. And so, you know, and I thank the police for that, because before that experience, I must say I was not very trusting of the police until I went through this experience with my son. And unfortunately, he went straight from high school to the big school. So at 18, he caught his first adult charge, and he is currently serving federal time. He was facing 60 years at 18 while he was still on juvenile probation. And he decided to take a plea because he did not want to give up the other people's names. As we know, unfortunately, in the streets, they have this don't snitch thing or whatever that thing is supposed to be. And he was in West Virginia up until yesterday. They just moved him out to Oklahoma City. He called today. They just moved him out to Oklahoma City. And, you know, I thank God that he took my son off the streets because I knew where he was headed. He was going to be on the front cover of a newspaper and in the news. So he was either going to kill somebody or somebody was going to kill him. He was ruthless. He was reckless. And I had to turn him over to God because there was nothing else that we could do. We were praying for him. We, like I said, we went and got services for him because the services that we were promised through the court system was not coming through. There was no halfway houses and no programs that wanted to take him because he was such a risk. And it was just it. It was done. And I just said, God, you know what? He's in your hands. Just don't let nobody kill him and don't let him kill nobody. And that's when I believe God took him off these streets when he caught that adult charge, because the police did say when they rolled up on him, he was the only one who did not run. So I believe that he maybe felt like he was at the end of his rope and he wanted something different. And his time in prison has not been the easiest for him, but I think now he is starting to come around. He is the father of a 7-year-old. We did not meet the baby until she was 3 years old, after her mom had passed away, because her mom was locked up and committed suicide in prison. I think they said 2 or 3 days before she was supposed to be released. So that's when we found out that he had a son. And so I think that is starting to change his outlook on things. And back in June, he sent me a letter and said he is now under the Muslim faith. So he is now in your community as of June of this year. And I'm just looking forward to all that God has planned for his life. The place where they moving him to, they have trades in at this facility in Oklahoma City. And he said today, when I spoke to him today, that he wants to take up the culinary arts trade. So this is a blessing. He also graduated with his GED, and while he was locked up in West Virginia, and I'm so proud of him. He did not have to take the the classes in order to study for the GED because he tested out of it. So he only had to take the test, and he was the valedictorian of his class. And my sister helped him write his speech that he had to deliver. Of course, we couldn't be there, but I know that God has his hands on him and everything is going to work out. And I just, I'm grateful for for the police officers that I met during this time, for those who, when they see me from time to time and they'll ask me, hey, how's your son doing? And they'll still check in with me. And I'm just grateful to that. And I thank you all for your service as police officers on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you for this story. Let me ask you, I heard you say that the entanglement with the police was something that many of you experienced in your family. You said the father of your sons, yourself, and I think the one son that we're talking about. First of all, congratulations on his progress. We will certainly make prayer for him that because he sounds like a smart young man, though he kept himself in trouble. But I want to just say congratulations to you, because it sounds like he may be on a better path now. But let me ask you, because we know that so many young men die in the street today. Do you believe that your relationship with some of the police officers, knowing them, helped in some way, that they were neighborhood police officers?
Yes, ma'am, I do. And, for him to have been in the streets and getting in all the trouble, the one thing that the officers, counselors, and people would say about him was that he was very respectful. So he was like never disrespectful to the law. He didn't do those things. And they were kind of surprised. And everybody was just trying to figure out, then why is he going down the road he's going when he was respectful to everybody? And so those police officers in this community really helped a lot, and I appreciate them much. Yes.
Lieutenant Shakir, I have a question to you. When I was growing up, I played softball for the PAL. Those kinds of activities or programs, do they still exist, where police officers are in the community and engaging with parents and the neighborhood in a social environment?
First of all, my heart goes out to her. I've had some of the same issues with my family. My son was shot 5 times, being in the wrong place, wrong time. He was a troubled one. But to answer your question, when I was in the police department, especially in the 7th district, we had a girls and boys club, and we taught martial arts there. And my grandsons, they played football, Park Warner football. And I was always at every practice, regardless of the gunshots went on around me at the playgrounds. But yeah, my heart goes out to her. I pray Allah keeps them too.
Well, I just know that as I was growing up, I mean, there were killings in our neighborhood, but at the same time, there were those social exchanges in the neighborhood between the community members and the police department. We had the boxing organization, we had softball, we had picnics. And even though we knew that these challenges existed, like our parent here who has a son who it sounds like he's a very smart young man, but just stayed in trouble. It was those relationships that helped. So that's going to bring us into our next panel, our next 2 speakers. First of all, I want to just say to the parent that we are rooting for your son and your family. And it sounds like you guys have come a long way in terms of meeting the challenges that you've been presented with. We really just want to say that we will keep you in our prayers. But our next two officers, who are active officers, they're going to speak about, they're going to describe how police and community can work together for the benefit of our citizens. We've heard from two retired police officers, both who are pioneers in the police department in terms of being Lieutenant Shakir being the first Muslim on the police department, in the police department, and then Brother Sabir, who's now retired as well for 28 years. Our next two police officers are active, still on active duty. And so we want to hear from Officer Kevin Johnson. Kevin has been on the police department for 30 years. Wow, I didn't realize that. And he's a dedicated Muslim serving and building positive relationships in the community. Officer Kevin, you just heard from our parent. Please, can you speak to that and just give us some advice on how the community and the police can work together?
First of all, assalamu alaikum. I want to thank you all for, listening, giving time to us to, have this conversation. As a parent of boys, I lost my oldest son to the streets also when he was a couple of years ago. So that's always heart-wrenching for me to hear stories like that. It's just that we as police officers, we want to try our best to reach out to our family, people that look like us, who mean something to us, and try to connect them as best as possible. No one's lost. We try to help our people as best as we can and try to stay in the community as much as we can, because we can't look to others who don't look like us, who don't feel like us, don't know the culture, and expect them to answer our problems and our issues.
So can you expound more on, tell me some of the programs that you're involved in the community as a police officer? I understand that you're a father of boys, but tell me, and that I know that impacts you because you're a father of boys, of two brown boys, and right now they are facing some real challenges. Tell us some of the programs that you're involved in the community, or some of the programs that you would like to see between police officers and parents.
One of the biggest programs I'm involved right now, I work with the Specialized Liaison Branch, and we work with the interfaith community and also the African community. So between those two communities, I'm able to reach Muslims, other people of faith, to assist them in building stronger connections with the community. Just basically give an opportunity to actually know someone face to face. A lot of times people are just not aware of how they connect or how they want to connect. So in a sense, I'm like Officer Sabir in the past. I'm an officer friendly, basically for the interfaith African communities. I connected them in different ways through doing just basic things like it could be a fashion show, it can be a play event with kids, also we work with boys and girls clubs. So we just all around doing community events, connecting with people in like-minded situations. So you might see us anywhere through the city, participating in fairs, just a wide variety of events.
Do you feel that the community looks upon you, have expectations, different expectations on you as a Muslim African American police officer?
Yes, the standards are, they want to be treated fair. They want to know that you're consistent in your behavior, and they want honesty. They want to know that they have somebody they can rely on. So a lot of times I get a lot of phone calls from a physician just asking for fairness, the truth of the matter, how can they do things better, how can they do things differently. Sometimes with us, we don't understand the system, how the system works.
Mm.
So I'm here to try to clear some of those things up. It's easy to say that you know something or you understand something that you're not a part of, but usually that's not true. So it's always great to have an ally in that organization, that community, so you can ask those real questions, so you can get a better answer of what's actually true and not the perception of truth.
So let me ask you, because I know that I don't know how different the environment is for you as an active officer today than it was for. Let me ask that question. How different is the environment today, knowing that many of the young people that are arrested have Muslim names? Was it different 30 years ago versus today? How does that impact you? What do you, when you run into a young person with a Muslim name, how does that impact you?
To be honest with you, it doesn't impact me any different way because my namesake is Kevin Johnson. So I don't really, it's because of my namesake.
Did I lose you, Kevin?
You know?
I think I did.
Can you hear me now?
I think something is happening to your
Can you hear me now?
audio. Yes, I can. Mhm.
All right. Yeah, because my namesake is Kevin Johnson, having taken on an Islamic name. For me personally, I work on people's character because I've realized that a lot of people have taken on Muslim names just for, I guess, the mystique and not know the knowledge behind it. Some people are taking on Muslim names as more of a gang mentality and not really understanding or knowing the religion. So for me, I work on people's character. From my physical appearance, most people assume I'm Muslim from my conversation. So usually for me, basically I work on people's character, the interactions.
Do you find that that Muslim parents reach out to you for help with their children who might be encountering problems in the street?
For me, it's not really the parents that are asking me for help. Most of the time, it's our first generation Muslims that come here who don't understand some of the American ways how to handle things as far as traffic tickets, interaction with the police, what the expectations are, what the expectations are not. And I try to bring it to them, try to ask them questions or answer their questions. And some of them just don't understand legally how to do things properly and don't understand the consequences for some of the actions. So I'm here to talk to them and help them with those things, just clearing up misunderstandings or just not having knowledge of certain things.
Excellent. So thank you, Officer Kevin. We are going to move to Officer Anand. Please stay with us because we do have some questions, but now we have our female Officer Anand. Welcome, Assalamu alaikum, Officer Anand. We are so pleased to have you here with us. And I can only imagine as a woman officer that you face many different challenges. But please tell us some of your encounters and how you believe that you have provided assistance in the community as a female officer.
Assalamu alaikum, first of all, and thank you for inviting us for this discussion. For me, yeah, it was a, do you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. It was a big challenge, wearing a uniform with a hijab, and especially coming from a culture where policing is not considered a woman's role. So it was a big challenge, first of all, joining the police and having my own family accept this was a big challenge, which alhamdulillah, uh, they've now accepted it and they're happy that I followed my heart and did what I wanted to.
Mm.
And my main reason was to join, to serve. Also, I wanted to show people that, women with hijab are not suppressed. They can do a lot of different roles in the community that are considered not for them, that are kind of, people think they won't be able to do it. So I wanted to have that change, and I am, Allah has blessed me a lot with the acceptance that I got from people, from the community, and how I've seen people happy, when they see me in hijab, and it excites them. I've seen our Muslims, brother and sisters, to accept it, and maybe that was something that they wanted to see. And it's kind of, I would say, sad when I found out that our officer, brother Muslim, he joined the department in 1982, and it took us this many years till I joined in 2017 to have a hijabi female officer on the department. It took us those many years. That was kind of upsetting, but hey, somebody has to do it, and I hope this is my wish, that I see more female officers with hijab who come out. Like, I know they want to do it. I have a couple of female citizens come ask me, they're Muslims, like, how do we join it? How they ask me questions, what I experienced, because I saw the passion that they want to do it. So I hope it happens, and we our Muslim females are representing us a lot more in many, not just police, many different professions.
So for our audience that don't know what hijab is, why don't you explain that? Mhm.
Sure. Hijab is a head covering that we wear and cover our hair with our head. That's called hijab.
And so what have been some of the challenges that you have met? I know culturally this was very difficult for your family, for
Definitely.
you as a woman to become a police officer. But what are some of the positives in the community when you go out? Do you go out to arrest people as well?
Yes, I am. I work for 2nd District, and I'm in patrolling right now. Yes.
And so what are some of the skills that you use when you go out, when you have to go out? What are you faced with? What are some of the challenges that you have to deal with that you think are unique to you as a female officer?
Well, so, you get a lot of doubts in people's mind. How is this little girl with a hijab? I know people don't take it seriously, but then you have to prove yourself. That I think you have to do a lot more to prove yourself than any other police officer, So that I think is kind of pressure on us little girls that we have to prove ourselves. And but then what I have experienced is that I have got a lot of respect from citizens out there, or people who we are engaging with, than any other person. And I believe that that's because of my head wearing my hijab. People respect me more with that. That is amazing. That is just really surprising. When I joined it, I didn't think that I would get this kind of response. But when suppose we are on a scene and there are other officers, but when I go to the scene, I see a different kind of respect towards me when they talk to me, other than the other officers. And that's God's blessing, I would say.
And you've been on the force, you've been on the police force for 3 years.
3 years, yes.
3 years.
Yeah.
Wow. And so what are some of the areas that you patrol? Is that something that you can, yes, of course you can talk about, but yes.
Yes. So I mostly work in Northwest 2nd District, like MacArthur Boulevard, Georgetown, DuPont, that kind of area.
Mhm.
Northwest.
I understand.
It's a lot different than other districts,
Mhm.
5th District and 3rd District, but still it has crime.
So are there, this is to all the police officers, and especially the ones that are retired and the ones that are active. I heard Officer Kevin talk about interfaith. Is there more activity or conversations on an interfaith basis in the police force? I like to know that for present and for past. And I'd also want to open up conversations to anyone else on the panel before we conclude this section and then introduce Magdalene. Is there more interfaith conversation between religions on the police force? Can each one of you address that? And what is your role in that, if you have one?
Well, my experience, excuse me, was it was a Jewish lady that was threatened by her own community, and they called me to protect her. So here you have a Muslim with a Jewish woman protecting her from other Jewish people. And I thought that was just God sent also, and a sign that we can get along. And we do for the most part.
And of course, it builds better relationships.
Yes.
Sabir, what about you?
Well, fortunately, I've been blessed by being under the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad for 30 plus years. And one thing he always pointed out was religion and sincerity. So when it comes to faith and the faith communities, the emphasis is not on the ideology, but on the practice, on your behavior, your interaction with your fellow man. So that emphasis, that's always been our focus as a community, not so much the external ideologies, but the human focus on the human destiny that all of us share under the Abrahamic faith.
So, Officer Kevin, is there an active interfaith organization within the police department now?
Yeah, I'm the leader of that organization. Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you repeat
yeah,
that?
I'm the leader of that. And yeah, I am the person who is basically the leader of the interfaith liaison, and also Anam works with me at certain points for certain events. So, and when we speak of interfaith, we're basically in the Jewish community, the Sikh community, Christian community. Basically, we go to all the community events to find, instead of differences, but commonalities, so we can work together. I don't know if that was clear or that came past. I don't know.
Are you called in for any special kinds of cases or as an interfaith group? Does the police force?
No, we're not called.
Go ahead. He's freezing.
Can you hear me now?
No, go ahead. I can hear you.
Yeah, as far as being called in, if it's something, emergency situation where somebody's not aware of how to respect other people's practices and they need assistance for that, we come in those times. Like when our brothers passed a couple of years ago, Mujahid Ramzadeen, so we had to help out, direct the department, and also the PG police department.
He's freezing.
Can you hear me now?
You keep freezing, but
Can
please
you
go ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
I apologize about that. Yeah. For instance, I was called in to assist Prince George's County with our brother Mujahid Ramsey that passed a couple of years ago. So I
Right.
was able to be a facilitator for the family and Prince George's County to assist him in his burial and how his actual respect for his Muslim beliefs and also his family's beliefs. So things like that are priorities, and called in for events that people might understand, or events where Muslim community might feel like they're in jeopardy, or other communities might feel in jeopardy for practicing the way they want to practice.
Officer Anand, is there a large population of women officers of religious of Muslim backgrounds?
There sure are many Muslim females in the department, but and you get to know once you talk to them. It's not very apparent. It's not something that you can just see them and you can tell, oh, she's Muslim. No, but there are quite a number of female Muslim officers.
And what kind of special, are you involved in any special neighborhood or community organizations?
So I also work for Special Liaison Branch with Officer Johnson, and we attend many different religious events, different religion communities, and we go there, discuss. It's amazing how we different religion, and you can still sit down to have a friendly chat, discuss things. What is in your religion? What's different? How is this? And it's. I think I am blessed having this platform to discuss my religion and hear out what other people have to say about them and about us. So that is something that Special Liaison Branch provides us.
Well, thank you. We are going to now ask Monica to, and please stay with us as we move through the program. We do have other questions. I would like to open the questions up to any of the panelists, especially our parent who's on the line, Monica from the U.S. District Attorney's Office. We will come back to some questions after Monica introduces our next guest.
Thank you, dear Fitra. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my partner fighting crime. That's what I call her, my PFC, Magdalena Acevedo. I just have to put this little plug in. I remembered before I came to community outreach, I was working downtown in the front office, and the former U.S. Attorney, Channing Phillips, he was a principal at U.S. Attorney at the time. We hired Magdalena. I remember when she came in for her interview, and I just knew that she was going to do great things because of her tenacity and her kindness, and she had a heart for the community. And now look at her. It's been 12 years. Oh my goodness, it's been 12 years. And you know, she has plenty of experience. She's been with homicide. She did a little bit of everything in the office, and now she's with me at the best district in the city, over at the 5th District as our community prosecutor. And I'm going to have her to talk to you about some of the misconceptions and the myths. So thank you so much, Magdalena.
Thank you for that great introduction. And I am so happy that we are able to speak with your community tonight, where Monica and I are part of our office's Clergy Ambassador Program. And that's a part of our office that not just works with the community, but specifically works with communities of faith, and puts on programming and attends programming that really looks at that intersection of the law and faith. So I've been asked to speak to you tonight a little bit about some of the misconceptions that the community has about police and prosecutors and law enforcement, and about some of the misconceptions that we in law enforcement have about the community. So one of the biggest ones is that we are all one office, that prosecutors and defense counsel and judges, we're all in it together. And really, we are all separate. The prosecutor's office is not one of the police, and we often disagree. I think, I don't know the exact statistic, but I think we probably decline 90% of the arrest warrants that police officers give us. So we don't just follow blindly with what they say. And also when we ask them to investigate cases, they speak their minds too. So we are a check on each other to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And that leads to another misconception, which is that we do not care about the truth, that the police and the prosecutors just want somebody locked up. They want to close the case. They don't care if the person actually did it. And in recent days, and especially we've been talking more in the community about the way race plays into people's biases, about systematic issues at fault in our criminal justice system. And I have to say that most, and I'm not gonna say all, but most prosecutors, most police officers, most defense counsel know that there are issues in the system and that we're there to make sure that everybody gets their honest, their fair day in court. And it's happened not once, but quite a few times where we've proceeded with a case. We had a witness who named somebody, and then we found out that the witness wasn't telling the truth, or the witness wasn't somebody that we could rely on, and the case was dismissed. And that's why it's a big reason why we rarely rely upon just one person's say so. We always look at what other evidence is there. And because we do have that burden to prove somebody's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a very high standard. Another misconception that we often hear, especially Monica and I, is that law enforcement doesn't care about the community. And you've heard from some of our police officers tonight about the work they do in the community, but the prosecutors do work too. So there are 3 community prosecutors, and Monica, please help me. How many community outreach specialists do we have?
There's 6.
There's 6 community outreach specialists, and our full-time jobs are to work in the community. We work in schools to teach young students, usually 5th graders, about decision-making, about responsibility. And that's one of the ways that we try to keep kids out of the criminal justice system. We try to get to them before they have that first arrest. And even after somebody has been arrested, we still want what is fair and what is best for the community. So we always balance the needs of the community with the needs of the offender. So another misconception, and I think we're on our fourth one now, is that we only care about jail time. That our only thought is to convict people and lock them away as long as possible. Now, we recognize, as do many judges, that putting somebody in jail isn't the best way to rehabilitate somebody. That's not the best way to have somebody come back into the community as a good citizen. So in most cases, and I say most because there are times like with cases like homicides, where really the balance does really weigh heavily towards protecting the community, where we propose diversion programs, and that means ways for people to take responsibility for their crimes without getting a conviction, without getting jail time, and with having access to programs such as drug treatment, anger management, and other social services as well. On contrary to what some people believe, we want to make sure that the people who do come before us after having broken the law, that they return to the community as better citizens, because it doesn't serve anybody's interest to have, for us to ignore the reason why people ended up in the criminal justice system, because those reasons, if not addressed, will still be there and will end up in that same situation again. And I learned actually about another misconception from the parent that you heard from today. And that is that there's a belief that the prosecutors are in cahoots with the defense counsel, that we're all working together, that we don't really care about the result, that defense counsel can't be trusted. And this is a little bit of a strange one, because if you see defense counsel and prosecutors in court, a lot of times we do joke with each other. We are nice with each other because we spend a lot of time together. But when it comes down time to try a case, we are boxing each other. We are battling it out. And not even, I don't know if it's even fair to say that we're battling it out, because a lot of times the prosecutors are also disclosing to the defense things that we know that they should know to help them defend their client. And before I move on to misconceptions that we may have from law enforcement about the community, are there any questions about the misconceptions I've talked about so far? No? Okay, I'll keep talking. So there are some misconceptions that we have to fight. And when I say we, that means prosecutors, judges, defense counsel, police officers. And at the outset, before I talk about our misconceptions about the community, I want to say that most of us are constantly learning. The more we interact with the community, the more we know about the community, the more we can understand about the community. And I appreciate it, and I think most of us appreciate it when we're called out about something we may be ignorant about. And, there's nice ways of doing it and mean ways of doing it, but I think most law enforcement do not want to live in a bubble. They want to know how they can best help the community. But one of the misconceptions that I started the office with was that people in the community cover up for criminals. Because when police arrive on the scene, a lot of times people will refuse to talk to the police, or they'll lie to the police about what they saw. There will be video of somebody witnessing a crime, and they'll still say that they didn't see it. When I started working with witnesses in violent crime cases, in homicides, I learned that most of the members of the community aren't intentionally covering up for people. It's that they're scared. They're worried about how cooperating with the police, how cooperating with law enforcement, prosecutors, how that's going to affect their lives. If that's going to put them in danger, if that's going to put their children in danger. And so one thing that I've talked to the community about that people oftentimes don't know is that if you're a witness to a crime, if you're a victim of a crime, you can control that interaction with law enforcement. If a police officer asks you on the street in front of other people, you can tell them, I don't want to talk out here. Call me later, come inside my house, meet me downtown, meet me at Starbucks. You can control that interaction because your safety is the most important to us. We want to solve violent crimes. We want to bring peace to families who've lost loved ones, but we don't want to put other people in danger in doing that. Another misconception that we had was, or many prosecutors have, are that, people east of the river, people in high crime areas, they know about all this crime and they're just withholding information. They could tell us all of it and we could, put an end to this crime. And the truth is that there are many parents, like I'm sure our parent speaker tonight, that try to shelter their children from those lives in the streets, who are trying to do their best. Even if you're living in a high crime area, there are parents who don't want to expose their children to that and don't let them out. And that's a little personal for me too, because I grew up in a rough neighborhood and I was not allowed out of the house. I didn't know a single thing about what was going on in my neighborhood because I was not allowed to participate in that. And the last misconception I want to talk about, is really a partial misconception. And that is that the community doesn't trust law enforcement. And I say it's partial because from my experience, most community members start off not trusting law enforcement, but as we talk with each other, I think we can earn that trust. So that's why I say it's a partial, because it's one that I think we can easily change by communicating with each other with our whole hearts.
Thank you, Magdalene. So let me ask you, what is it that you do presently, Magdalene?
So my current title is that I'm a community prosecutor. So I wear many hats in that job. So I attend community meetings. I am the link between the community and the U.S. Attorney's Office. So if anybody has questions about something happening with the office, they can contact me. My cell phone number, my email address, they're all publicly available on the U.S. Attorney's website. And I could put them in the chat box too before we finish. I participate in training the community. Monica and I put on community training in all kinds of different areas, everything from heroin and opioid abuse to recognizing to domestic violence, to recognizing childhood trauma and resolving childhood trauma so some of these children don't end up in the criminal justice system. A popular training that we've been doing a lot recently is teaching the community members about knowing their rights in interactions with law enforcement. And I think I mentioned we teach 5th graders about the law and about decision making. So that's just the tip of the spear. My other role right now is I review arrest warrants from the 4th and 5th district and determine whether that's something we should be proceeding with, whether to deny or approve those warrants that police officers request. And finally, I speak with domestic violence victims after the abuser has been arrested. And I talk to them about whether they want to proceed with the case and how else we can help them stay safe, even if they do not want to proceed with criminal charges.
So do you believe that what do you believe is one of the main characteristics that would help between a police officer, that you find in your experience, between a police officer and a community person? I know you mentioned trust. Is that one of the characteristics, or what do you find is most important to better relationships between a police officer and a community member?
So trust has to be earned on both sides. I think the biggest thing that we have to do is that we all have to check our own biases. And that's true for white people and Black people and educated and uneducated and poor and rich. I think it pertains to all of us that if we do something repeatedly, we start thinking that, you know, every situation we encounter is like the last one. When we have to, I think, really try to go into every situation with an open mind.
Magdalene, thank you. Please don't go. We would like to continue this conversation. So I want to ask the police officers, all of them, how important is de-escalating a situation? How real is I hear a lot about de-escalating situations. How real is that? I want to start with Anand. How real is de-escalating a situation? How much influence do you have when you're in those situations to de-escalate it?
So it is real, and our first goal for any kind of situation is to de-escalate that, as that's our primary goal. But it, depending on the situation, sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes one officer can de-escalate, and sometimes he cannot. So it basically depends. It depends a lot how you build a rapport with the person. You know, it's sometimes you give respect and you get respect, and in some cases that's not the case. So it all depends on situations, but that's always our primary goal, to de-escalate the situation.
So Kevin, Officer Kevin, what are some of the worst situations? Is it really young men? Is it spousal relationships? What are some of the, we always hear about young men breaking the law. We don't hear a lot about other law-breaking situations. What are some can you share with us that are other than young boys out breaking the law?
One of the biggest issues we have is domestic violence. The things that people don't know about, or things people try to hide that somehow erupts and we get involved as police. Those are the big things, interpersonal family issues. Sometimes you assume that things get better, and sometimes things get worse. You have situations that have been going on for 10, 20 years, and one day erupts into a murder, or someone harms someone seriously. That's our biggest issue: the things we can't control, the things we can't see, the things we have no control of. It's easy to point out someone walking down the street, but to know what's going on in somebody's personal life, that's when the difficulty becomes.
Officer Nam, we have a question. Someone said that they understand that your brother is also a police officer?
Yes, he is. He's a sergeant at 1st District.
And how long has he been on the force?
I believe 6, 7 years. Yes, much more time than me.
So Lieutenant Shakir, what has changed? What do you see has changed in the police department? Take yourself off mute, Brother Shakir.
I'm not on mute. I'm just trying, I'm thinking, you know, and I don't see much that's changed.
No. Have things gotten worse or better? Have relationships, has the reputation, because this week is about honoring the National Faith and Blue Weekend. Do you feel that police get a bad rap?
Yes, and some of them deserve it. And I'm still a police officer now, and like Kevin said, Officer Johnson, domestic violence, because everybody now is in the house together. And they don't know how to express that to somebody outside the community, outside their home. So we see a lot of battered men and women, but mostly women.
Mm.
But as far as things changing, it's part of the culture.
It's probably
Both
what?
the police, it's part of the culture in the
Part of
police
the culture.
department. Yes, and so, and in the community, you know, I have to agree with everybody. The trust isn't there yet, but I think it's getting better. We have people like Kevin and the sister. Things got to get better, and the prosecutors in the precincts, unheard of. Never heard of that.
Mm.
Outstanding.
Brother Sabir, Officer Sabir, what
Yes.
do you find different today than when? Because I understand you are still working. Is that correct?
Yeah, I work down in DC Superior Court. I'm one of the deputy marshals for the courts.
Mm-hmm. And so, as a retired officer who has gone back into policing in a different way, how do you see things changing now that? How does it affect you differently? How are you working differently?
Well, I think technology has a lot to do with what's going on now. I was fumbling through my Facebook, just surfing the Facebook one time, and I ran across something that Will Smith had posted, and he was saying racism is not getting worse; it's just being filmed more. So I'm saying that to say this time is the world has turned into glass. So things that people used to do in the dark has come to light now. So this new openness, this new awareness, this new consciousness, the modern term now, this new awokeness, you know, has allowed the community to actually confront historical, I would say, imbalances in our community, and I think it's a good thing. It's going to take a little time for us to get through it, but I think it's going to be better on the other side. But we just have to go through this time.
So, Monica, we've heard from everyone but you, and you play a very important role in the U.S. District Attorney's Office and in the community. So please share with our audience what it is that you do.
Thank you, dear Fitcher. As a community outreach specialist, my job is intervention and prevention. I always tell people that I specialize in reaching out to my community as a community outreach specialist, and that's what we do. We reach out to our two most precious commodities that God has ever put on this earth are our children and our seniors. I do believe that our children don't ask to come here. We go and get these babies. We go and get our children, because if the truth be told, they might have chosen someone else to be their parents. And then our seniors whose backs that we've, oh my goodness, that their shoulders that we've stood on and our backs that we rode on, that they get to, to live good, long lives. And then, we come up with these folks that want to steal their money, these schemers, these folks that are always taking advantage of our seniors, always calling them. They've got some type of scheme, some type of fraudulent activity going on, and, taking advantage of our seniors. So it's my honor and my privilege to be able to reach out to our children and talk to them, as Magdalena said, about internet safety when we do Project LEAD. And LEAD stands for Legal Enrichment and Decision-Making Skills. And we try to target the fifth graders before they get to junior high school. So we do go into the classrooms twice a month at the various schools in the District of Columbia. This year we'll be at Brown Education Campus off of Benning Road on 26th Street. And we're going to talk about internet safety, diversity, bullying, respect, truancy. And, the big kid that I am, you know what? I keep saying that we're going into virtually. I forget that this coronavirus has come and just changed our whole lives around. But when we were able to go into the schools, we do this and we dress up like the officers. And I would always try to bridge the gap. And I would always take MPD. I would always take Postal Inspection Service, marshals, FBI, Secret Service, someone to go in and interact with these kids, because there's no need for our kids, you know, running and nobody's chasing them. I do believe that. We want them to be able to be respectful of law enforcement and have law enforcement to be respectful of them. So we go in and do these skits and talk about these scenarios together. And then we do a mock trial. So we set the classroom up like a courtroom as we get closer to the end of the school year, usually in May. We have the kids to play the different roles, and you all would just be amazed at how you can see these little babies, I say little babies, but young people transform right before your very eyes, because we talk to them about, you know, what do you want to do when you graduate from high school? What do you want to do when you grow up? Oh, I want to be a basketball player. I want to be a football player. And that's wonderful, but suppose something happens and you get hurt, then what are you going to do? Well, what do you like to do? Oh, I like to draw. Well, you know, they need sketch artists in the courtroom. Oh, because you can't have cameras. Well, I didn't know that. Well, what do you like to do? I'm good at math. I'm good at science. MPD needs shot spotters, somebody to measure those distances with the shots. You know, we give them things to think about. How many of you like to have the last word when you're arguing with your parents or with your brothers and sisters? I do. You'd make a good attorney. So we give these kids a chance to think about career opportunities. So we do the mock trial, we practice in the classroom, and then we take a trip on that D bus, down on it, catch the D bus that goes down H Street, the double Dutch one. And we go downtown to the courthouse. And we, a lot of our assistant U.S. attorneys are now judges. So when I say I have a project lead class coming, they understand that, you know, the class is they're gonna come in, fifth graders are gonna come in, or sixth graders, but we try to target fifth graders, to see a trial. We do everything, of course, except a homicide trial. And the kids get a chance to really see what's going on. And then the judge will allow the kids to do the mock trial in the courtroom. And the judge will come down off the bench and play a juror. And one of the kids will be selected as the judge. And it's a wonderful experience for them. Along with, we have the U.S. Attorney's Leadership Academy. And that's geared for students in grades 8 to 12, where they can earn community service hours. And then they get a chance to also come down to headquarters office at 555 to the U.S. Attorney's conference room one Saturday out of every month. And they get a chance to go and maybe play bingo with seniors at the senior building. That's leadership skills. They get a chance to do mock trials again. They get a chance to maybe visit the Supreme Court or a visit to the White House, but they're interacting and doing some great things. And this is how we want to, you know, to grab a hold of our children so they can, you know, be able to carry on what we're all doing right here. And you always hear children are our future. No, they're not. They're our presence. They're our gifts. They're our right now. So we want to be able to train them and prepare them for great and awesome things in their lives. So know your rights. We want our children to be able to know their rights. You know, when you get stopped, whether you're walking, and some of these babies are getting ready to start driving, or whether you're driving, they need to know how to interact with law enforcement. So we do the truth about marijuana, because there is a difference between marijuana and K2 spice. We want to talk to them about these things. Infant fatality, you know, teen domestic violence. We have so many, human trafficking. Oh my goodness, we want to talk to them about a little bit of everything, because knowledge is powerful. So that's what we do with intervention and prevention. We interact with DYRS. We interact with all of our churches, our schools, our community centers, our whoever will open the door and let us in will come to be able to reach out to our children and our seniors. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity, Victor. Thank you so much.
Before we end the program, we want each of you to be able to share your contact information if that's permissible. But I do want to ask a question to our police officers and to any of you. It's an open question. When I was growing up, I used to always hear the saying, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. So I want to know, from our trusted police officers and those in the U.S. District Attorney's Office, how much can you actually learn about those camcorders that are on, that police are now wearing? Because we have you and this opportunity, so much is being, these cameras are being used to influence our minds for and against the police. And since this is National Faith in Blue Weekend, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our audience, how much can you really depend on what you see on those cameras? And I know you can't speak, I want you to speak generally if you can. To any of you, please answer the question.
I look at whenever I'm looking at arrests, I always, especially when you're talking about people, situations where a gun is thrown or evidence is thrown, I always look at the body-worn camera, and it's hard to watch. You have to train yourself to watch it because the camera's shaky as people are running. You know, the view is limited, but to me, it's an amazing check on the system and also an amazing corroboration of evidence between the body-worn cameras and the increased availability of surveillance systems from private individuals in DC through DC's rebate program. I think the scope of or the method of criminal investigations has changed 180 degrees.
Lieutenant, thank you so much for that, Magdalene. Lieutenant Shakir, do you have any thoughts about the body camera, you and Officer Sabir?
And they didn't have that when we
Right.
on the department, they didn't have it at all. I have mixed emotions about that. Do the officers have a choice in cutting it off, cutting it on? What about the audio? It's as good as the officer that's using it, and the people like the prosecutor that's looking at it.
I just want to add that it is problematic at times and this came up with the recent attempts by the DC Council to change the laws about body-worn cameras. They want the body-worn cameras to be disclosed to the public in a very short amount of time. But one thing that we have to worry about is that body-worn camera also captures witnesses, captures conversations that are private in nature. So those are all things that we would have to redact to ensure the privacy of those citizens too.
Officer Kevin, what do you think about the body cameras? What do you believe, half of what you see and none of what you hear? I mean, do you feel safer with the cameras on in terms of protecting yourself when you are engaged in any arrest? He's frozen. Officer Anand, Kevin, when you, please, if you have it. Mm-hmm. You're going in and out. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm here now.
Officer,
I'm here.
we're having a little trouble with your audio.
Well, let me say this, Fitra.
Please. Please, Officer Sabir, could you please go ahead?
Cameras is one part of the whole picture. Cameras have to be put in context, because what you see is what you see, but what you don't see is what happened before the camera footage, and the context of the footage, what's taking place in the context of that footage, because you have to put it all together. You have to find out what happened before the event of the camera in order for you to understand what you're kind of looking at the camera. Because the camera is just one part of the whole picture. It's an analogy about the three blind men that was walking down the road, and one of them grabbed the elephant's tail, and one of them grabbed the elephant's trunk, and one of them grabbed the elephant's leg, and they was asked to describe what an elephant is, and one of them said the elephant is big, one of them says the elephant is skinny, one of them said the elephant is sharp, because they had a limited perception of their interaction with it. So that's how a camera is. A camera, you have to know what happened before the video, before you can really understand what you're kind of looking at in terms of the context of the event.
Kevin, are you with us, Officer Kevin?
I'm here. As far as the cameras, cameras are probably right now one of the things that have happened to law enforcement, in my opinion. We need them. Right now, as cameras are set, before we actually push the button to start the camera, it starts about 2 minutes before the initial contact. So you're able to see a little bit more. Cameras have probably, as far as complaints, our complaints have probably gone down because things are on camera. They're easier to find out. And it's not a question of who said what she said. You have something you can reference to of what actually happened. So right now, I'm looking at it this way. Cameras help us out a lot, help the citizens out to see a better point of view of what happened, especially if you have multiple cameras on the scene. You can see it from different angles and have a better understanding of what happened and how things occurred. So for me, they're great.
Yes, we have a question from the audience, and this is open to anyone. When a police officer goes to a domestic violence incident, they interview the parties and decide who was the initial aggressor. Sometimes that is the person who called 911. Why is that? They're trying to understand why, what then happens to that person? Do they get arrested? I'm sure it's play by play in terms of whether there's any physical violence. Well, they did say it's domestic violence, so I'm assuming that there's been some physical exchange in the relation, in the situation. So I guess what they're asking is, why is it that the aggressor, the person that called 911 ends up getting arrested? I don't know how you can really answer that, but I did want to answer it since it was asked by one of our audience members. If someone wants to address it, they can.
Well, actually, if I may,
Please.
this is the parent, and I did post not that particular statement,
Okay.
but I posed the question where, as a survivor of domestic violence myself, I went through 10.5 years of abuse with the father of my 4 sons. I know that sometimes when you call the police, sometimes the woman gets locked up as well. So my question was, why is it that the woman also get locked up? Not all the time, but sometimes. And I have seen that in other cases as well, where the man and the woman gets locked up. So that was the question.
For us right now, can you hear what I'm saying? Am I clear? Can you hear me?
You're having a little problem with your audio, but if others can hear, please continue, Officer Kevin.
Yeah, I don't know when that incident happened, but things are a little more clear now in this year, as far as 2020. When it comes to an individual getting arrested, we try, for the most part, not to arrest both parties. We don't want to re-victimize the victim. So we try to determine who's the aggressor in the situation, who started the situation, who did the most damage to someone else. And we try to separate the individuals to talk about what happened, how it happened, what happened, and that talk them together. to create intimidation. But the issue we have is a lot of times when we go in these situations, no one wants to tell actually what happened. They rely on the other person that's talking or other person talking to somehow remove them from the situation. We as officers can only take in information that's been given to us. We don't create the situation. So if we have a party, if a female says that he struck me, he did this, this, and this, and then we interview the male and he says, well, nothing happened, I don't want to talk about it. We're going to take that person's word. If we have a situation where we have two people basically saying one thing, they say their piece, the other person says their piece, we can evaluate and determine who's aggressing the situation, who should be arrested. But for the most part, we try not to arrest both parties.
So we have another question, and this is open to all of the panel. What are some of the ways that the average citizen can support the efforts of our law enforcement workers? Now, perhaps this person came on after we spoke about it, but I want to give them, I do want to ask their question because they're interested in knowing. So if each one of you maybe can tell us one thing that the average citizen how the average citizen can support the efforts of our law enforcement workers.
Go on a ride along. Request a ride along.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Request a ride along.
And
The citizen can ask the officer, you know, can I ride with you for 4 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours? I think
really?
everybody, you do, yes. It's called a ride along.
And you can do that? You can actually ride along with an officer?
Yes.
Do they put on will they put on a bulletproof vest on you and all the protection that you need to be in a car with a police officer?
No. Get a sign release form, you know.
It's kind of waiver thing.
Waiver.
In the world would want to get in a car with a police officer. I commend you all. I mean, because you walk into danger. I know there are some bad police. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, and Newark is a tough area. I know there are some bad police, but God knows there are more good police than there are bad. And even the bad ones, the danger that you walk into every day make you paranoid. Has to make you paranoid. It has to. But I want to continue with the question. But thank you for saying that. So you said ride along, meaning that an average citizen can request to get in the car with a policeman or police officers and ride along for a couple of hours in the day. That would be a way to solve some of our problems, because then the average citizen would be walking in the shoes of the police officer and see what he encounters. Can anyone else answer, what are some of the ways, or what is a way that an average citizen can support the efforts of our law enforcement workers? Please, anyone.
For me, the best way would be to actually have a conversation with a police officer, speak to a police officer, some kind of social engagement. It's difficult for you as a citizen to understand a police officer if you don't talk to them. We're not robots, we're human, we actually eat, we drink, we sleep, we have families. And if you believe that we don't, that is I've had people ask me, like, you're eating? I'm like, yes, I do. I need nourishment, I need to function. And I don't think that they're just some kind of robots. Like, when they're human, that piece of interaction was
Yes, Monica.
If I can just interject real quick, I understood what most of Officer Johnson was saying. You know, my whole thing is they are policing or protecting our neighborhoods, our communities, where we live, where we work, where we raise our children, where we take care of our elderly parents, where we, take our kids to school. So I was always taught that in the book of Proverbs, it says, if you want to have friends, you need to show yourself friendly. So we see them every day, whether they're walking, whether they're driving on a motorcycle, on a bike, on a Segway. Reach out to them. Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing? Treat them like they live in your neighborhood because you see them every day. So make them a part of your community. It's hot outside. You see them walking the beach. Can I offer you a bottle of water? Can I offer you a glass of tea? Or, the little things in life mean so very, very much. The little things. We see the big things because they're live and in living color, but the little things, just a kind word, a smile, a good morning, a thank you, a thank you. Oh my goodness, I thank you so much for doing what you do for us. Spring, summer, winter, or fall, whatever the conditions are, you're out here helping us and protecting us to keep us safe. So if we just kind of just start reaching out and just not seeing them as the enemy. I don't want to use that word because it's kind of strong, but as an opposition for the most part. So just treat them like you would want to be treated. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's one of the ways that we can start bonding and having some good interactivity and some engagement with our men and women that protect them, because suppose they didn't come by, suppose they didn't, there were none, what would we do? What would we do? So I just think that we should just need to show some appreciation and some celebration and some gratefulness to our law enforcement men and women.
I would tell you what we do. We would be in trouble if we call the police and they don't come. We would be in trouble.
Yes, we would. Yes, we would.
Just a month ago, a young boy stole my bike outside of my house at 3:00 in the morning. He had an electric saw. I did not call the police on him because I was afraid that he would end up getting killed. I didn't want that on my conscience. So I literally sat there and cried and watched him cut my bike, 2 police locks on my bike, 3:00 in the morning with an electric saw. And literally I sat and cried because I wanted to have a belt and go out there and whip his you-know-what. But at 3:00 in the morning, I'm sure I would have been faced with more than an electric saw. So I just didn't do anything. But rather than to call the police, I cried because I didn't know what would happen. So yes, if we didn't have the police to call, and we need to realize that if we didn't have and so here comes a very hard question, because someone is asking me to ask it, so I'm going to ask it in the spirit of knowing that there are many good police. Please explain, what is this code of silence with bad cops? Is there such a thing? I don't want to be incriminating or putting any of you in a compromising position, but the person keeps sending this question to me, and so I'm asking it. Is there a code of silence?
Yes.
I think that I think there's a code of silence in the sense of like-minded individuals together, working together in a group or a pack, and they basically keep each other's secrets, or they move a certain way. But that would be the root of it for me, or the better understanding of it. It wouldn't be. It's not the police department as a whole, but it's certain individuals who work together, who have the same mindset, who might cover each other in those ways. But overall, it's not like 1,000 people in this group. It can be a group of 5 to 10 people who operate, who think the same. So under those guidelines, I would say yes.
And I think that's, in your explanation, it tells us how language is so important. Because I could use code of conduct synonymous with birds of a feather flock together. Because what you just explained is exactly that you find people clustered together who are of the same mind. Name it whatever you want to name it. So I appreciate that definition. I'm gonna ask this last question, and then I'm gonna ask each of you to give a closing comment on National Faith and Blue Weekend, why you think it is important. But I want to ask, how much has legalizing marijuana, I mean, drugs have always been a problem, we know that. But do you see a rise in problems with legalized marijuana? I mean, I can't walk down the street without it being filtered through my air. Has it been is it a problem? I mean, Sabir, you work at the courts. How has legalized marijuana impacted us? I know our most vulnerable are at risk.
Well, I see young men coming into court. They have court cases. They're about to face the judge, and you can smell them a block away. Unbelievable. But it's hey, city council made it legal without the will of the citizens of DC. That was passed on city council level. It was never no vote for it. But you know, I don't know what to say about that. You know, it was mind blowing when they passed it and made it legal. As far as I'm concerned, it was mind blowing.
Oh no, go ahead, Officer Kevin, please.
From my standpoint, it comes down to a cultural thing when it comes to the marijuana. The more, I guess, impoverished, the more poor community, they smoke on the corners or in front of people. The ones who are more affluent smoke in their house or smoke in their apartments. So it's not like it's not like different parts of the community aren't doing it. It's a cultural thing of how they do it. Because as I come out, I go throughout the city, and you'll smell it throughout the city. You have a lot of growers right now in the city. It's just that the ones who smoke outside are more evident to see. The ones who smoke inside their houses, their homeowners, or high-priced apartment renters, you might not see them. So it might look a certain way, but it's bigger than that. It's just a culture of how you do things. As far as arrests, you don't have arrests of people you don't have the arrest of those outside smoking it, because more vulnerable to be arrested by the police. So they're not being arrested, but the big issue for me is the ones that are smoking, the influence in the younger community. And the younger community believes that, just like alcohol, you know, on the streets, they believe it's cool or it's acceptable to do. So right now, because you have a group of a certain culture smoking it outside, it becomes an influence in younger kids that want to do the same things as the older males. But when it comes down to a bigger thing is, those younger kids now want to graduate from school or college to get certain positions, can't get in those positions because they have to pass a drug test. So that's the big thing. The government allows you to do certain things, but then they won't allow you to create revenue to take care of your family because you can't pass the test.
Wow. So we're coming to our closing. I want to give the panelists an opportunity, if they have programs that they would like to give contact information to our audience where they can be reached. Especially you, Monica, if there are programs that the community can get involved with, our other officers who are retired couldn't get involved, if there's a number or an email that you can share, if not, then we certainly understand. But I do want to give you an opportunity to share that.
Thank you so much, dear Fitra. I put my email address, my name and email address in the chat, and I will also put my telephone number in there as well, because we do look for opportunities to interact with our community. And for those of you that have young people in your lives, to give them a chance to participate in some of these programs that we do. And we always do a big annual youth summit, usually in the month of June. This year it was in, I think, August, but we usually do it in June when there's no coronavirus. Something else that we can get our kids involved in. And then we work with so many great partners, of course, like MPD and, Masjid Muhammad and OAG and CSOSA. We work with so many great partners as well. So together we can help be a blessing to our young people as well as to our seniors, because we have to make sure that they're taken care of and not abused and disrespected and misused as well. And one last little tidbit, Fitra, you were asking about putting on a bulletproof vest when you did a ride along. When I first came to 5D, I did a ride along, and I did one on the day shift, on the evening shift, and on the midnight shift. So of course, when it came to the evening shift, I was wondering, well, when I first went there, I was like, so we, have vest on. I was like, well, where's my helmet? They were like, no, Monica, that's the short yellow bus where you need the helmet. So yes, I said the same thing. So I do feel you, my dear. So thank you so much again for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure sharing the format with all of you on tonight. Thank you.
So before we go, I want to give each of you, we are going to have the imam come on and close the program out. But before we do that, this is the National Faith and Blue Weekend. I would like to give each of you an opportunity to share last thoughts or words with our listening audience. Starting with you, Lieutenant Shakir.
It's also election season. Ask those politicians that come to your house, want you to vote for them, what's their agenda? And my agenda is the young people. So that's one way of doing it. Because if you're not helping the young people now, they're going to be in your house pretty soon. With you home, you're not home. Uninvited. Vote.
Vote. Officer Sabir, what would you?
I just want to thank Kevin and Sister Anan. Congratulate them for their outstanding work in the community. I hope they continue to do it. Anything I can do to help them in that, I know how important it is, and and I just want to let them know I personally appreciate it, and all the work that the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing, and you, my dear sister, what you're doing in the Masjid community when it comes to dealing with the issues as far as violence and social justice.
Thank you. Dear Hanan, Officer Hanan, what would you, it is the National Faith and Blue Weekend. What would you like to say about the brave officers? And we're here to celebrate those brave officers. There's bad in everything, but we're not here today about the bad ones. We're here today about the ones who have the courage to go out and try to build better relationships with the community.
First of all, I just want to thank you everybody for taking your time out and sitting down and having this discussion, which is really important. Second, I want to add on to what Sister Monica said, and I really loved what she said, that please accept these officers who work in your community every day, accept them as your community members, because we get a lot of questions when they ask us, are you a DC resident? If you're not, so you don't care about us, which is not true. Us officers who do not live in DC, we still care about the community where we work, because they are part of us. So accept them and go ahead, have conversations with them. Before you make an opinion about something, go ahead, talk to them, friendly conversations, and then make opinion on something. So yeah, that's just my closing point. Do accept us officers as your own community members.
You are still a human being, no matter where you live. Isn't that right?
That is right.
I mean,
We
exactly,
are not robots.
exactly.
Yes.
Magdalena, what would you like to say about our National Faith in Blue, our officers who we're celebrating today, the good ones?
The good ones, and most of them are the good ones. And I think it's been said before, I just want to reinforce that, go into your conversation with law enforcement with an open mind. Don't assume that they think the worst of you, and don't think the worst of them. And I want to make sure that everybody had our contact information. It's a little hard to spell things over video, but so I wanted to just point out that my contact information and Monica's contact information is on the 5th District roster for the Metropolitan Police Department. So if you just Google MPD 5th District roster, our contact information is there.
Thank you. Officer Kevin.
I just wanted to say that we're here to help in any way we can. We're here to support the community. We're a part of the community. We want the community to thrive. Anything we can do to help, we can. Just reach out to us, ask us a question, and we'll try to do our best to answer it.
And Monica?
I want to thank our men and women in blue, all of our law enforcement men and women all across the country, but especially in the District of Columbia where I work and am a vested community stakeholder. Thank you so much for all that you do. And I know it because working at the station, I see what others don't see. I see how you sacrifice and how you take time with the children and take time with seniors, and I see all that you do. So I do appreciate you all, and I just celebrate all of the men and women in law enforcement on today. Snaps up for you all. Thank you so much. If I could do a cartwheel, I would, but thank you all so much, and peace and blessings to you and your families, because you're out here when nobody else is. So like Fitra said, what would we do if we called you and you didn't come? Oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. So thank you all so much. Peace and blessings. Thank you so much.
And I want to say thank you as well, because every time I do hear about an encounter, I always think of my friends who are police officers. And I know them, and like I know all of you, and you're good people. And it's painful to me when I hear us just consider use our prejudices against and lump people together. And so I want you to know that I do regard you, your families. I pray for you. I often think of you, the danger that you walk into every day. Again, I know that there are bad police officers, but I know bad parents. I know bad grandparents. Somebody said, that bad person used to be a very young person. I don't want to leave out our parent, forgive me, because I don't see her face. So before we go to the imam, I do want to give our parent an opportunity to say, as a person who has been entangled in law enforcement, who throughout most of her life, and who has a son that we are praying for that has taken a different path, what would you like to say to the men and women in blue?
I would like to say, just thank you again for what you all mean to the community. Thank you for the service and the sacrifice that you make, and for putting your lives on the line, every day when you go out to serve. And, to just let other parents and other citizens and those in the community know that it is okay to reach out to them. I know, unfortunately, in the Black community, it's not always cool or hip to talk to police officers. People start calling you, all kinds of names, snitches and things like that. Even my son called me a snitch, and I really did not care, that he did call me that. And so we have to put down our perceptions of the police, and like it's been already stated before, just get to know them. They are people just like we're people. That is their job that they do. So let's not forget that they are human. They are people. They care, they love, they feel the same way that we feel. And just everybody just respect everybody. And again, thank you all for your service. Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brother Imam, are you on the line? Good.
Yes. My son, Jamal, he was a police officer for the state of Georgia. And before I did my statement, I put out my public statement when George Floyd was killed. I sent that to my son, and he looked at it, and I had to make some changes because in my statement, to some degree, it kind of did a broad brush. And he reminded me that he was a police officer, and he's not in that category, and there are many others not in that category. And that helped me. I forgot he's in the military now. That's another thing. And there are others. And but so much. I'm just so grateful for the panelists. This has been the National Faith and Blue Weekend event hosted by Masjid Muhammad. And of course, it couldn't have been possible without our moderators. Sister Fisher has done a wonderful job. Our partner, DOJ, Monica. I mean, we've been partners for a long time now. And I certainly want to thank Magdalena. What things that came out, this was very educational, informative, and also inspirational in terms of what we've received today. We've heard from veterans. I mean, I'm just listening to Shakir, the kind of years he put in, Officer Salim, and then we look at Kevin, and we look at Sister Mumtaz, and they're the present future right now. And of course, you heard Shakir comment about, he's just glad to see the kind of things that are taking place with Kevin and her. I mean, they're in place right now, but they've served. But there was a time when Muslims wouldn't go in the military. And in fact, the same thing happened with the police department. Same thing happened with the police is what happened with the military. A lot of the migrants who were Muslims didn't go in the military until Imam Muhammad, who we heard his name quite a bit, who was called America's Imam, picked up the flag. And the same thing happened with a lot of law enforcement. We didn't find a lot of those migrant Muslims in law enforcement because they had the mindset of their home, of their country, what their country thought about America. If they did go in, they went in, they left their religion at the door, and they came in, Muhammad became Mike and those kinds of things. But that's not happening today. And we see that in the NAM, the culture is changing, the diversity is there. This is the best of America. We're seeing the best. There's nothing in what we've heard today that would make somebody say, I can't get with that. This was straight talk, real talk, coming from our veterans, coming from those who are present. We heard from a parent, a mother. I mean, this was really a good session here. The discussion was excellent. And this is, and you see the professionalism. We want all our officers to be like these officers here. And what we're hearing really is the majority of them, they ascribe to be very professional. And they are concerned about the environment where they serve, where they work. And so we're proud of each one of them.
Yes.
And what they represent. And we want this to get more exposure. This kind of setting right here is very relevant to what we're seeing. And Kevin was speaking about, things being more clear. And because we're a proponent of this is faith, obviously 2020, dealing with clarity of vision. Things are being made clear. Things are coming out right now. And what we're seeing right now, people need to know about those who do serve and those who do care. And that code is not universal among police officers. That's limited. This quote unquote code of silence, that kind of thing. a lot came out. And again, Kevin spoke about, you know, it ain't got nothing to do with the label. It's about the life. It's about the life. And that's just a model behavior. You know, he don't cut corners because you have a Muslim label or whatever. And we got Officer Shakir speaking about how Muslims protecting the Jewish community, calling the Muslims to protect the Jewish woman. Now that's kind of stuff you get over to the Palestinian-Israeli situation. You know, see how Muslims and Jews are doing in this kind of situation right here. This is a very important information that we're seeing and we're hearing, that we shouldn't just look at them as just being fixtures in the community, just sitting there, but they're human beings. You've heard some of them have the same kind of problems. They had children, had drug problems. You know what I mean? Children's in the gangs, children getting shot, these kind, I mean, they're the same kind of things. They got families, their husbands, their wives, their sisters, their brothers, their friends. This is what we need to know. This is, and it need to be treated that way. And this is what's going to help the community. And because our motto is our community, our responsibility, that's our. That means we're in this together. And some beautiful things came out in terms of when we see them, we should treat them like they are part of the environment. If you walk by them, you see them, they're in the environment. We share that space together. Let's begin that'll make them feel better. They'll begin to take ownership. It's hard for someone to see you as a certain way when you treat them as though they're foreign. No, they're in your space and they're there to protect the space. And so we should embrace them. So this has been a very good session. So again, I want to just thank everyone and those who are behind the scenes. We got some behind the scenes doing things. We want to thank those behind the scenes. And because those who are going to cut things down. This has been also on Facebook Live. We had comments coming from Facebook Live. And again, it just appreciated. Again, you taking the time. You serve some we heard are out of service, but they're not served out because they're still serving. Shakir retired, did his 30 years, and then he's still serving. Officer Salim, same thing. He retired, but then he's still serving. You know, and yeah, I learned something about. I know them, but I'm learning something now that I hadn't known about each of them. You know, I didn't really know Kevin had that much time in. So that's quite a bit, and they're serving with excellence. They make us proud, and everything that Shakir said that the Imam Muhammad, when Shakir asked him why we should serve, we see that in this body of officers, and we thank you very much. So with that, we'll begin to close it out. We want to say that we pray for each one of you, and because we know we're in some serious times right now, not with just the stuff that's in the environment, we're talking about even the pandemic now, in addition to the other things that challenge your life as police officers, your life, and all of them on here right now, their life is still on the line. They are postured really to make a sacrifice, you know, for so many. And that should mean something. Someone's willing to put their life on the line to their life is really postured to be sacrificed for people that don't even know. They don't even have the personal relationship, their family, the intimate relationships, but they're there and their lives are postured. So we pray for you. We pray for your protection, for you, your families, for your sustained health and your well-being. And we ask God to give you the strength and the resilience to continue to do what you're doing with the utmost professionalism that you do it. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and assalamu alaikum. God's peace be upon you all.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.